This is the DRF Players Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the DRF Players Podcast. This is the August 25th, 2017 edition. We've lost track of the numbers due to our loyal fans know we've been having these little iTunes issues. A few of the shows haven't shown up in the roster. That's my cheat sheet to go see what show number it is. It's somewhere around show 263. So let's go with that. We'll confirm it later. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatel, back with you live from the Little House on the East Side. Super excited today to go over one of the best, if not the best, non-Breeders' Cup Day cards that I think I've ever seen. We've got something like 6 grade 1s happening Saturday at Saratoga. The weather's beautiful up here. The vibes have been good all week. And in the course of the next hour, we're going to answer some listener questions and go over these stakes races. I am joined today by my usual co-host. He's meant to be here in person, but veteran traveler that he is, sounds like he made a little bit of a rookie move. So he's starting off today on the phone. He's the People's Champ, Jonathan Kinchin. JK, what happened to you this morning?
Look. This is what happened. I pop from the gate. I get to the front. I get my position, and then things just start going great for me. I make my flight. I get my bag. I get my valet. My lift is ready to rock and roll when I get out. And then I got the Kurt Becker call, widening on a 5-length lead. And then, just like Julian Leparoux at Keeneland a couple of years ago, my horse jumped the rail. And so I should be there in like 12 minutes, but nonetheless, I was going in the right direction.
The Little House on the East Side has the same address as a house in a neighboring town. It's kind of confusing. Delivery guys, you can tell them 16 times, and 1 out of 5 times they go to the one in Ballston Spa. So I assume you went to the one in Ballston Spa. Is that what happened?
I'm not 100% sure, but I think so, since I'm on Ballston Spa Avenue.
We'll be talking about the Ballston Spa in a few minutes, but first, I want to introduce today's very special guest. This is a man returning to the program. Also, he did some valuable pinch-hitting duty earlier this summer at the Naira Betts Pavilion Tent Seminar. We'll be having another one of those tomorrow. JK, I think I'm going to press you into service maybe with Nick Tamaro for that one at 11 o'clock at the Naira Betts Pavilion Tent, talking a little bit more about the Travers card. But this guest, he goes by many names. Some people call him Slim. Some people call him the Sultan of Schenectady. Some people call him the Gentleman Jockey Agent, the Piper at the Gates of Dawn, or simply Pipes. He's the man who's never lost a photo, and he's a damn fine handicapper. I'm speaking, of course, of Chris Pipito. Chris, how are you today?
You're a legend, man. I appreciate the intro, man. I didn't know I had that many names, man, but it feels good.
I like it. We've been having a lot of fun hanging out at the Paddock Bar this summer, picking a few winners, sweating a few difficult pick sequences and grand slams. And Chris, I'm really eager to get your thoughts on these races today. I say we dive right in. We start talking about these stakes races. We had a few other questions, some possible tail from the track opportunities we might get to along the way. But I say we dive right in with the first of the graded stakes, which goes as race 6 on Saturday. It's the Personal Ensign, and it's the return to the races of Songbird. I expect we'll see Paddock Bar regular Ghostbusters Chris sporting his Songbird Lunch Pail Philly t-shirt tomorrow as part of our group hanging out at the Paddock Bar. Chris, as our guest, we'll start with you. Is anybody going to beat this filly tomorrow?
I wanted anybody but me to take the lead on this race because I have so little to say about it, honestly. I wanted to try to beat Songbird. But I mean, after looking it over in this type of a field, she's just lone speed to me. I don't know who could possibly go with her. I do think that the 2 other fillies in there going for Broke and Forever Unbridled obviously are really nice fillies. The one thing I'll say about Forever Unbridled is her start down at Churchill, which was her only start out this year. Joel rode her with so much confidence, off a pace that I don't think was a serious setup to just circle everybody and you know, in my mind, destroy him like she did. I know it came back with a low number, but visually it was way more impressive than that. And going for broke, you know, I liked going for broke going into this race. I like her around 2 turns. I liked her last time 7/8. I'm not sure how the trip's going to set up for her. I'm going to use probably all 3 in multis and hope I can get lucky, but I don't have confidence beating Songbird in this field.
Songbird's last start, much maligned by visual handicappers and figure handicappers alike. But there's a couple of things to consider. Some shrewd observers of track bias have mentioned that she was kind of against the track that day as one excuse. Another excuse, as we've talked about before, that was a classic case of the owner picking the spot for the horse to run in as opposed to the trainer. Now, the owner was probably right. When you can run for that much money in a race that he'd been trying to win for years, it made sense to go there. But we know that Hollendorfer's preference was to keep her at home and run her against weaker. That just tells me that maybe there's another dimension here for Songbird. And heck, even if it's just the same Songbird that we've seen out twice this year, Chris makes an excellent point of how difficult it's going to be to beat her with this pace scenario. JK, is this a single and move on for you, or do you have anything to add about the personal insight?
Yeah, it's a single and move on. I feel like I'm playing musical chairs or like hot potato with Songbird because I know for a fact she is going to lose at some point this year. I gotta find the time it's gonna be, and I'm just gonna wait a little bit longer on the hot potato and hope that it's not this time because I don't think she's gonna lose this time just because of the pace advantage. I do think, however, if this was November and Forever Unbridled was coming into this race kind of second off of a little bit of a break, I would be interested in betting her. I think people are going to fall for her because she is the most likely candidate, maybe even out there, other than like Stellar Wind, that could potentially beat Songbird. I'm going to just keep waiting for the right chair, right potato situation. I'm going to wait till the next one. She's going to lose at some point. I just don't think it's going to be tomorrow.
I love the hot potato analogy. You go ahead,
real
Max.
quick, JK. I mean, looking at Forever Unbridled, right, after the Oaklawn start, I mean, in the Ogden Fifths, I thought that she just got buried down inside, and she was best that day. She couldn't get loose and make her run when she wanted to, and cavorting just swept the field in there. When she did shake loose, you could see her really explode through the lane. In the personal ensign, I just thought she was hung out both turns, and that was like a grinding style trip in a short field. I never thought she quit. I mean, she's a super filly, this filly that Dallas Stewart has. I really believe that. I don't know that it's going to set up the right way for her, but I mean, I can't see her have done anything wrong since the Apple Blossom. I really can't.
No, I'm just hopeful. I'm very hopeful that Songbird wins by 5. Joelle takes Forever Unbridled way far back, and she's like a fast closing third, so people forget about her. But I have the confidence she's going in the right direction, so I can bet her again moving forward.
It'll be interesting to see. Definitely doesn't look like a fair fight on paper in terms of the pace scenario, but good points made about the merits of Forever Unbridled. Been so carefully handled by Dallas Stewart, but it seems like that's what she needs. She's a filly who can really finish, and we have seen her finish without setup before. Would you consider using her on any backup lines tomorrow, Jonathan, or are you going to just seriously 100% lone A single?
Forever Unbridled. I mean, the good thing about it is God bless the racing secretary for keeping this out of anything significant. So I don't really have to. I probably won't even be playing multis in this race. I might just watch it. Yeah, because the thing is, I'll get sick to my stomach if Forever Unbridled wins and I don't try to beat her, but I don't want to waste. I don't try to beat Songbird with her, but I don't want to waste money on her either. It's kind of a tricky proposition. It's
a fair point. The pick 6 begins in race 7, which is the Ballerina. JK, how are you going to get things started off?
Actually, let Pipes do this one first so I can transition out of the car into the living room.
Okay, we're going to get a cameo on the show, I imagine now, from Muggs, the handicapping Labrador, big fan of the People's Champ. And she's no doubt, well, not no doubt, but she's probably going to freak out as he walks in here. But Piper, where are you going in the Ballerina to start off this pick 6?
I'm going to Michelle Nevin's horse, By the Moon. I think 7/8 is the right distance for this horse. Obviously, 2 wins at the distance, 3 seconds and a third, and I think that these horses have all taken turns, kind of knocking heads and beating each other. I've been trying to beat Paula Silver Lining the last couple times. Obviously, it hasn't happened. I think that the pace setup could be good for By the Moon in this spot. I think that Curlin's Approval, coming up from Florida, I mean, she just worked 3/8 in 33 and 4. Hopefully, she sets a sharp pace. She goes out there. Paula Silver Lining has to lay close. I think that By the Moon should set a good tracking trip, and that's kind of where I'm going. I'm against Karina Mia in here.
Those of you listening to this podcast in stereo are about to have JK go from one ear to the other, I believe. JK, what are your thoughts on the ballerina?
Yeah, I'm kind of against By the Moon a little bit, and for no great reason. I feel like Chad's kind of got it over a barrel with Paula Silver Lining. How good has she been for him since switching to his barn? Undefeated since that switch. Karina Mia undefeated since the switch as well. She's only run once and not nearly against the competition that Paula Silver Lining has. But for me, it's one of those two. But I'm also really going to use Curlin's Approval a little bit. The horse from South Florida runs really nice races at 7 furlongs. Tactical type. So I don't have a strong opinion in this race. I think on the out of the gate, I actually gave out my A selections, the pick 6, and I used those 3 horses: Curlin's Approval, Paula Silver Lining, and Karina Mia.
Pipes, as a handicapper, when you see a filly like Curlin's Approval, whose last race is just so much better than anything else you see on the page. It came back a 104 by her speed figure. Some figure makers had it even higher than that. How do you try to evaluate what that horse is going to do in her next start when that one last number isn't like the others, but may also just represent a new level of ability, especially if the work tab and the Clockers reports on the work tab are to be believed?
Yeah, but you know what? At the same time, I mean, you also have to take into consideration what type of a track was it that particular day, down in Florida, when she had proven that she had run big numbers down there before. Now, I understand she didn't get the same type of a number in those races, but I'm not necessarily trusting that to come up here and translate onto this type of a track. I think that Luis Saez has a lot of confidence in this filly. He rides her well. There's no doubt about that. But I'm not necessarily sold on saying, okay, well, I believe that against Distinta and Lightstream, that was just that much of a performance as opposed to what she had done before. What's to say that the race that she ran February 18th, where she won by 6, couldn't have gotten close to that same number, It just, I guess, depends on the track variant and that type of thing, where they're coming up with that. But no, do I trust that number? Not really. I mean, to me, now it's just a completely different ballgame coming from that type of a track down there up to this one up here. So
fair enough. Let's move on to the first race in the it's not the first race in the pick 5, is it? It's the first race in the $1 million guaranteed pick 4, the H. Allen Jerkins, the race formerly known as the King's Bishop. I think everybody knows who JK is going to be picking in here because he's been talking about this horse for this race on this podcast for months. But let's just confirm who your selection is.
Yeah, no, I'm singling Practical Joke. Talkaful's borderline or runoff type, so he's going to go from the inside. Baffert on the outside is going to be forwardly placed. If he's not forwardly placed, then he's going to end up being kind of wide somewhere. If he takes back, he's in the 10 hole. He's going to be outside of somebody. So I think he's going to be wide. Cole front will probably go a little bit. And there's a bunch of horses that are going to go. Phi Beta Express is going to go a little bit. Practical Joke to me is going to take back, sit that inside trip. Hopefully through the turn, Joel stays confident. He's been on this horse a lot, knows what the horse has, what he's got underneath him. He's on the cutback from the Haskell. He's in a circle at the top of the stretch and mow them all down. I think he's the most likely winner on the card.
Wow. I'll put up a long shot in this race. Number 8, No Dozing. I think has some races that are a little bit better than they look like. And Pipes, as you're a master of the Mid-Atlantic circuit, I definitely want your thoughts on this horse. But he's been against the track a couple of times, has a couple figures that might be higher according to different figure sources, and I think could be potentially the horse to make the last move if Practical Joke can make the move to blow the race apart. I think I want both of them, and I think I want to mess around with both of them in my exactas and tries. So number 8, No Dozing, and number 1, Practical Joke for me. What do you think, Chris?
I'm going to play devil's advocate against both of you guys. The more and more I kept looking at this race, and I want to like Practical Joke too, but just not at a short price. I remember, JK can tell you last year I loved the horse that was going to come from the clouds named Tom's Ready, and I never had a shot to make a run in that race with Dre Fong just demolishing him on the front end. But I'm going to play devil's advocate, and I'm going to ask both of you guys. Let's talk about Takaful for a minute, man, if we can.
Yeah.
The last race that this horse ran was obviously the first week of the meet. The main track was playing extremely dead, if my memory serves me correct, and this horse ran 109-4, which was just a really, really impressive performance in my mind. I mean, I look at the 3 races going long. Obviously, this horse wants no part of going long. The 2 sprint races are absolutely off the screen, the Maiden Breaker and the last race. And I know that you guys are both going to come at me with there's going to be plenty of speed to set it up. And I look at that, and it looks to be the case on paper. And then I have seen those type of situations where Jose is able to get away with a 22 early and shake loose by 2 or 3, and he's impossible to catch. So I want to hear what you guys have to say about that, because the more and more I kept looking at it, the more and more I want to take a shot with Takaful in there.
Well, nobody likes betting the speed of the speed like Jonathan Kinch, so I'll let him start, and then I'll add just 2 cents on Takaful after that.
Oh, no, I love the speed of the speed. And you're right. His sprint races at 6 and 6.5 were amazing. My fear here is that if he clears, now look, if Practical Joke wasn't in here, then I could get into him being more likely to kind of just, speed of the speed, stay on, kind of like Dre Fong did last year. I mean, there's a world in which I could use him defensively, but I just feel like there's so much other speed that if he happens to get clear, if he happens to be 2 in front, then he's going too fast. And a classy horse like Practical Joke, who's been screaming for this race, 7 furlongs, grade 1, cutting back after the Haskell, he's going to be running at him late. That's the only fear that I have. Now, if I looked up and Takaful wired, would I be like, would I be shocked? Like, no, I wouldn't be shocked. But I just feel like this situation, he's going to go faster than he wants to go or needs to go if he happens to make the lead going 7/8 for the first time.
One of the great shock results that I can recall, Pipes, was you and I were together up there in the secret spot, as we called it at the time, during the Travers party when Capo Bastone won this race coming out of the clouds, running down Mentor Kane and all the rest. Yeah, it wouldn't be a jaw-dropping result if Takaful won. I just wanted to make one positive point about him and one negative point about him. The positive point, Pipes, I think you're exactly right. The way that track was playing, looking at the variant for the speed figure that day, if anything, that number, that 105 is low. You could argue that it should have been higher. The only negative I'll say is in terms of like the pace figures early, I don't think they're necessarily comparable to what you're going to see today. And that was also during that week, as seems to happen now every year at Saratoga, where Kieran McLaughlin was winning absolutely everything. And sometimes when a trainer's on a heater like that and the horse comes back, you don't necessarily see the same level of performance for whatever reason. But no, it's not a crazy idea at all. I think we need to at least pause for a second on American Anthem before we leave this race, because this is a horse who's going to probably be the favorite. Pipes, do you have any use for American Anthem in this spot?
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking to myself, it's probably going to end up like Belmont Day, where I'm against Baffert in every single graded stake, and he just makes me look like a fool. No, I mean, no. Look, I mean, obviously, I'm not gonna knock this horse at all. I mean, the Woody Stevens was just, super impressive to me. The one thing I will say is I'm interested to see kind of if he can sit that same kind of a trip with Mikey Smith, and if it's going to set up like that. If horses like Phi Beta Express and Coal Front and everybody just goes after Takapo early, that's kind of like the mind game to me of like, how are they going to play it knowing that horse is pure speed? Do they want to potentially sacrifice themselves to set it up for someone else? And if that's the case, then yeah, I can definitely see American Anthem running big.
Now, while Chris was talking, I was rifling through JK's luggage here at the Little House D side and was surprised to see no silver powdered wig. What's going on?
Yeah, in my lift on accident. My Uber driver, he took off with it, so I don't think I'm going to be needing it. Look, we talk about designing races a lot on here. I cannot design this race where American Anthem is not going too fast early or is not 4 wide. I just can't. I can't design it. If he happens to clear all these other horses and he ends up sitting off of Takaful, he went too quick to get to that position. If he stays back and lets them go, then he's 2 or 3 wide, and he's going to have to circle those horses at the top of the stretch or on the turn, and he's going to be 3 or 4 wide. Either way, I just don't see against this group of horses how he works out a trip to win it.
Hopefully our opposing Baffert works out better than it did on Belmont Day. Let's move on to race 9. It's the Grade 1 Forgo. This is the start of the Naira Bets late pick 5, where we have the 4 stakes races, and then you got to deal with that maiden claimer at the end. But I don't know. It's still kind of a mouth-watering sequence that might need to be contended with. JK, how are you going to kick this one off?
Well, if we're going to stay on the theme of designing races, the same post position, the same trainer, the same rider, I think Dre Fong will clear this field without a Takaful in here to bother him. He will end up saving ground because he'll be on the front end, and he's going to be super hard to catch. However, this little horse that's going to line up in the 6 post, Mind Your Biscuits, is really, really impressive. He's a really cool horse, New York bred. He shows up every time. He just runs amazing every time. I don't see how one of those 2 horses doesn't win, with my lean being on Dre Fong because of the pace advantage. As long as he doesn't take a left turn when he pops from the gate, I think he's going to be the most likely winner. I'm interested in Dividing Rod. He's the type of horse I might use in tournaments, though, because I feel like in like a tournament setting, a $2 win place or whatever, picking Dre Fong or Mind Your Biscuits, you don't have to pick one of them. Because if the other one beats you, you're not going to really lose anything. So why don't you take a shot here and try to get Divining Rod home? It's not going to be 5-1. I think he'll be a little bit higher than that.
Probably. You could see a lot of market enthusiasm for the favorites. And I agree with you. Divining Rod, I know I just picked another Delcor horse earlier in the show, but it's what I was thinking had a chance to maybe spice things up here for the Delcor barn and Castellano. Pipes, how do you see it?
Yeah, but where are all the speeds that you would expect to line up in a race like this? I mean, the Forgo every single year, you can expect that there's going to be some kind of a pace throwdown. No, I don't know. I'm confused because it's just, to me, it looks like obviously the only speed is Dre Fong from the outside. Yeah, I want to try to beat the horse. I'm going to stick with Mind Your Biscuits. I mean, I seemingly always go against these West Coast horses when they ship in, and obviously, as like last year, I got burned. But I'm going to stick with Mind Your Biscuits. This horse, just since they threw the blinkers on, has been just unbelievable. I mean, even the race out in the Breeders' Cup, going 3/4. If it's 7/8, he wins. And then, I mean, since then, obviously, the race down at Gulfstream, which was just a prep anyway. Kind of a curious ride a little bit, but I thought other than that, I thought everything that this horse has done just amazes me. Seemingly can place himself anywhere. He always comes with his run. I'm going to try to beat Dre Fong, and I know that JK is going to be laughing at me when Dre Fong goes about 23 and change from the outside and just gallop.
We saw that last year exactly.
I will say a little bit of a warning. I don't typically give warnings, but I do believe that Stall Walking Dude is a really cool horse, but I really believe he's better at 6, and he's not as good at 7. So, I think a lot of people fall for that because we talked about it with Ransom the Moon, where you see a horse going 6 or 6.5 who's closing, and you automatically assume, at 7, he's going to be even better. It's the same mistake people make where that you get a late-running horse going a mile and an eighth, and then shows up this first Saturday in May, and he's like, this horse is going to run. He's going to close. Derby to Belmont, too. It's a mistake people make. That run can be dulled as the ground gets a little bit further.
And I think pace dynamics are really the reason why. What they're running early can enable horses, and of course breeding comes into play too, but can enable them to look like they shape like they want more ground. But between those two factors, the early pace and the breeding, it can often be a very different story. Let's go on to the 10th race here. Pipes, you got one more point on that one?
You hear me?
Yo, you go ahead.
Hey, what do either of you guys think about Tommy Macho at the distance? Any interest?
I think he wants longer.
He feels like a horse who could run late for a piece. Had another trip last time, right? Didn't get shuffled back.
Well, I mean, the horse has only been 7/8 twice. The 3-back race at Aqueduct and the Carter, the horse was clearly best. I mean, I remember he was mired down inside. Louis couldn't get room to run through. And I mean, I definitely will argue that he's best that day. Then they go a mile in the Met Mile. I can forgive there. More Spirit absolutely just ran off the screen. And then, last time I thought the horse ran well. I mean, if that's a good tightener for this spot, I don't think that the horse is unusable at a price. I just was curious to think what you guys had to say.
What are you doing over there? You trying to set up a Grand Slam bet or something? This is the first leg of the Grand Slam. People might not know that Pipes is the Grand Slam connoisseur.
I do. I am. You know what, Kinch? I am kind of intrigued that the Grand Slam starts there. So yeah, maybe I'll spread with a few and hope I can get lucky with Dre Fong running out or something.
It does feel. I mean, that doesn't seem crazy to me. It does feel like either Dre Fong is going to control the race and make the Grand Slam a little tricky. But you feel like if he doesn't win, he's not the kind of horse who has to run second or third either. Something will have gone wrong in terms of the pace scenario, and maybe a horse like Tommy Macho would be able to get in there for you. Actually, let's pause on that thought just for a second, Pipes. And a lot of people, the Grand Slam it's a maligned bet. The Granny Slam, I've heard it referred to by our friends down there at the Paddock Bar. What is it you like about the bet, and how do you play it?
Well, what I like about it is just the fact that if you do have opinions looking through the race, especially more so rather than long shots that you think can hit the board, but rather having favorites that you think are vulnerable. I think that's the key to the bet is, obviously you would like to say, okay, well, can I get an 8 or a 10 to 1 shot to hit the board? But the object of the bet is the first 3 legs to run first, second, or third, and then obviously the last leg you have to win. So I think the key to increasing your payout is getting more favorites to run off the board in the first 3 legs. Obviously, if you have an opinion on somebody being a bad favorite, then that might be a good bet for you because you may want to jump in if you can get that horse out of the money. Obviously, you're more in line for big payouts. And I try to play them, in those type of situations. I mean, obviously, if you look through, it's starting in the forego. I mean, even if you like Dre Fong, even if you think there's no way the horse is off the board, okay, maybe you want to take a shot in a couple, in the Sword Dancer against the Euros, or maybe you want to take a shot in the Travers with somebody, which is a wide open race, and that almost guarantees that, at the end in the cash leg on a Lady Eli or a Antonone or a Roca, that you're going to guarantee that you can turn those horses into a price.
No, it's funny. I've never even really learned. I didn't really know about the Grand Slam until I started hanging out at the Paddock Bar, and I haven't even done one yet. I think I'm going to break my maiden today.
Maybe
tomorrow. We'll see. I'm going to break my Grand Slam.
Let's do it, man. I'm in with you if you want to break the maiden today.
Little family ticket. Celebrate with a boozy milkshake when it's all said and done. Sounds like a good plan for over there today. Shaping up to be a beautiful day. Why not add a little excitement into the mix in the form of a Grand Slam? Let's move on to the sword dancer. There was a question that came in from listener Steve that I wanted to ask you guys before we get down to the brass tacks of this race. And he said, when watching the replay of Sadler's Joy in the Bowling Green, he shied from the whip in the stretch, and he felt like that cost him in terms of the overall performance, which was nearly a winning one anyway. And he asked me, why a horse would do that. And wise guy that I am, I simply said, I think he probably did it because he didn't like being whipped. But it is possible that there's more to it, and it is interesting that this is a 4-year-old horse who you would have thought, and Castellano's ridden him several times before, you would have thought they would have known that about the horse. What do you make of that notion? Is it something you noticed doing your tape work, JK, and how can we use that information?
Let me preface this, I don't want to seem like a smartass, so I'm going to say this first comment's a joke, but I'm assuming that Sadler's Joy is like, Javier, well, why did you move so damn early? Yeah, I mean, I think with a young horse, it's probably a little bit more of an indicator of the horse not liking the whip. I wouldn't look too deep into it when you're looking at a 4-year-old who has shown no signs of it. I mean, watch the tapes back, and if you see it again, I'm looking through trip notes, and I don't see anything about him. And we usually write shy from whip or whatever. So I think it's probably a bigger issue with a younger horse.
What do you think, Pipes? Is that something you notice in your handicapping?
I agree with him. I think the horse was wondering why he was in front, and he just said, "Hey, I'm normally waiting to come from dead last and try to snap him right on the money. Maybe he just made the lead a little bit too early, but I know that's all I thought. I didn't put anything into the shying from the whip aspect of it. I mean, I did see that, and I think that, but I don't think that's going to be something that you're going to have to say, okay, well, that's going to be an ongoing theme with this horse. I did like that horse. I'm kind of married to this horse now a little bit. I'm just hoping Leparoux will ride it a little bit differently and kind of just try to time it just right, because I think that's what you have to do with this horse. I'm looking for your input as far as the Euros go, Pete.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, Idaho looks like a standout. I mean, this is Highland Reel's brother. We know what he's capable of. This form line from the King George and Queen Elizabeth just got even better this week, with both Enable and Ulysses coming back to win at one of the summer's most prestigious meetings up at York. He just looks like if the real Idaho shows up, everybody, including Erupt, is going to be running for second. Of course, it's not the easiest thing to ship across the country, and things can go wrong. So I don't know that it's an absolute stone cold single situation for me. But of the two Euros, Idaho's definitely the one who catches my eye. What did you think of this race, JK?
I thought I wanted to set the over under actually for, I don't know, we come up with something to drink or a Shake Shack or dinner. What the half is going to be in this race, and I think I'm going to set the over under at 54 seconds.
It's got to be under that.
Jeez Louise, I mean seriously. Frank Conversation last time I thought was going to go to the lead and didn't. I would imagine this time that Doug O'Neill will have straightened out Mario and he will go to the front. I think he could be dangerous if he does that. I thought he was dangerous last time. They're going to be going. I mean, it's a mile and a half. If Frank Conversation will open up by 6 and go 49 to the half, I think he can win. If he opens up by 2 and goes 52, then these classy closers are going to swallow him up at the top of the stretch. It's a theme we've been talking about pretty much the entire meet. Open up. Quit jacking around. I mean, I guess Idaho and Erupt are the ones that are the most likely winners. I'm going to give Sadler's Joy another shot off of that trip that he got moving way too early with Javier. Javier hasn't exactly had his best Saratoga meet, I think it's fair to say. And so, I'm going to use those two on the outside, the two Euros. They have raced against each other in this country before as a Woodbine. You got to go back to 2016 where Erupt got the best of them, but also got the jump on him in a slow-paced race. So Nothing overly creative here. I think this is going to be one of those survive and advance type of situations where I'm going to probably try to use a 3, 6, 7, keying mostly with the 6 and the 7 based on their European class.
Yeah, you make a good point about Erupt having Idaho on the book, but Idaho has just his form has just come on in a very big way. It sounds like the trainer of Erupt has said that you can't really pay attention to those ground conditions of the last 2 races of Erupt, and that the race 2 back in the Guinea, where the horse ran really well in a Group 1, was actually much closer to firm ground, and they expect much better. But still, I think there's no denying that Idaho's just in a better place right now. Did you have a further thought on this one, Chris?
No, I was just going to tell JK I'm going to go with Sadler's Joy too, but if he wants to make the over-under bet for a dinner at Saw and Char, I'll take under and just sit the race out.
I love it. I feel like we can't move on from this race without at least quickly talking about Money Multiplier. No love from either of you gentlemen for Chad and a turf grade 1. That seems like something you might be regretting in the minutes after the race. JK?
I can fade him here, but I dare someone to fade him later.
Pipes, any love for that horse?
No, I'm all set with Money Multiplier. I'm going to let him beat me.
All right, let's talk about this Travers, guys. What a race. I can't remember a non-Triple Crown race that had all 3 Triple Crown winners in it. You guys both have better memories than me. But do either of you recall a time when we saw this in recent memory? A Breeders' Cup, maybe?
No, I mean to phone a friend. I should ask Nick Tamaro. He would know for sure.
He'd start reciting.
I can't remember. I can't remember one.
But, I mean, just a super-duper cool race. A lot of different handicapping angles. We did get one question about a long shot in here. We'll put a pin in that, and we'll get to it at the end. Pipes, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on this Travers? Who are you? Talk about it from a multis perspective and also from a Grand Slam perspective, since we've been riding that train a little bit.
Okay, well, what I'm going to say about the race only is just that I have been completely scratching my head with the 3-year-old crop. I can't truly, make a stand for any one horse being, superior. And it seems like all the horses that early in the year were showing their best form have now seemed to have been tailing off of late. I'm looking to come right back with Good Samaritan. I didn't have him in the Jim Dandy, but I was impressed with the way that the horse ran. I mean, the distance is not going to be a problem for that horse. And the first start on dirt, to me, this is the only horse that you can't say, well, in the race, why can't he make another huge jump forward with his second start on the dirt? I think there's going to be speed to set it up. I am a little fearful of Tappert. I think that Tappert is the horse to beat in my mind. I don't know necessarily that you're going to get the same type of track that it was playing Jim Dandy weekend, but that's the horse that interests me. Just kind of being like a fresh face on the scene late in the year for me.
And we know Todd Pletcher does this well. Some trainers, you'd be a little nervous about the lack of a prep or whatever, but his seem to do their best running, emerging fully formed from layoffs, and that's what Tappert's doing, but training very well by all accounts, and absolutely a horse I get as a late year improver.
I mean, where did you guys see outside of Always Dreaming and possibly Kieran's horse on the outside, Fayette, where did you guys see a lot of other pace coming from in this race? Because I just couldn't find it. And I don't know that it's going to necessarily be that type of a race like the Jim Dandy was, where they didn't go overly fast, but it still came apart in the end. Maybe that's the possibility with not a lot of these horses wanting to go a mile and a quarter. But I think that you could be looking at a really, really slow pace.
Muggs, the handicapping Labrador, clearly agrees with you. The FedEx man has just shown up outside, so don't be surprised if we get another symphony of ululating barks over the course of the next 90 seconds while the guy drops off whatever he has, especially if he decides to knock on the door. But I'll nominate you, JK, to run and get it. But that's a really interesting question about the pace. I don't really have a pace angle in this race. How do you see the race just through the lens of pace, JK? You're so good. We talked so much about designing races. How do you see this one shaking out?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. There's no dead speeds in here. I mean, Always Dreaming obviously is going to be forward, and I would assume he's going to be on the lead. Kieran's horse, we're all skipping to say the name because that makes me want to say something different. But yeah, I guess Always Dreaming is going to be loose, but I don't really care because he was loose last time on the inside of a speed favoring track and did nothing. I said at the not the half mile pole, about the quarter. I mean, after a quarter into the race, I said if he doesn't win from here, he'll never win again. So he won't be on a ticket. Yeah,
I agree with you. I couldn't use him. I'm surprised he's in the race. I made that point before about Takaful running well when all Kieran's were running well. Well, think about how hot Todd's barn was that day. Yeah. By the time that race came around, I was absolutely convinced between the way the track was playing and the way that the barn was going that Always Dreaming was going to go close, and he would be on the no-bet list forever for me after that performance. But yeah, it's a really interesting handicapping puzzle, that's for sure. And Good Samaritan's worth talking about another minute. Two things about it. We talked about how even though the horse was far back, he raced for most of the race on what we deem to be the good part of the track. But then when he made his move, he sort of spun off the turn and ran wide. How do you assess Good Samaritan, JK, in terms of track bias? Was he with the track or against the track?
Oh, he was with the track. When advanced race watching, you got to watch the head on, obviously. And you got to learn where horses spend the majority of their time because just the last, furlong doesn't really tell the story. He was on the inside the entire time. So just think about it. If in terms of they ran a mile in an eighth race, with energy disbursement on running on a deeper part of the track or a lighter part of the track, a harder part of the track, he exerted less energy, because he was on that good part. So when he swung out, he was, Trevor Denman always says it looks like he jumped in at the quarter pole. Well, it's almost like he kind of did just jump in at the quarter pole because they were all running early and he was just kind of cruising on the good part of the track. So if he wins, I lose. For picking purposes, I'm going to pick Tappert. If you look at Tappert's last two races, the Kentucky Derby and the Belmont, 1.25 miles, 1.5 miles are his best races. I know he ran 6th, beaten 10, but he also got sawed off in the Derby, got steadied, and ran really well in that race. I think that for pick purposes, he's going to be the one. I'm not going to let Bob Baffert beat me in this spot with West Coast. I'm not as enthusiastic as some people are. I think the figures are a little bit low. At Belmont, he was on the good part of the track, just like American Anthem was. So I'm going to use defensively. I will not be using cloud computing. And I'm going to use two of kind of what we used to think were kind of the B-teamers. And that's Gervin and Iraq. I'm going to use those two horses as well in the A spots. Surprisingly enough, McCracken will not be on a ticket. I've been a McCracken guy for a long time. I think that his last race, if you watch it, he loomed, he looked a winner, and then he gave it up. And to me, that's the indication of a horse that wants to cut back.
Yeah, cutback makes sense. West Coast, let's talk about him for a second. My visual observation, we actually watched that Los Al Derby together. It just doesn't run well on turns. He did not look comfortable running around either turn in that race. Then he levels off, and he looked a lot better. Now, his best race, to my mind, is that easy goer. Belmont only had to worry about one turn and one wide turn at that. I don't know. At a short price, I mean, I get it. I don't love the idea of getting beat by Baffert either, and I'd probably throw in as a B because of that. But I'm not sure I'm fully understanding the horse other than Baffert fear.
Yeah, and I don't think people would, that don't play a lot of Los Al. I think some people in Southern California switches to Los Al. They might take a break. No offense to Los Al. You want to be on the outside of that track. That rail is like kind of always dead, very similar to Laurel. You just don't ever want to be down in there. So don't be misled by the wide trip of West Coast. If you're a Sheets player, he probably has a good number on that.
From the ground loss, yeah.
That track is always good on the outside, and that day it was good on the outside. So it's even more reason for me to kind of fade away from him. He's probably more of a B type for me. But Gervin, I got to give credit to Paul Matisse here.
He loved the horse in the Haskell, gave him out
horse.
on the seminar at Naira Betts pavilion tent.
And he loved the horse because his figures had the Ohio Derby, the fastest 3-year-old race of the year. And the winner of the Ohio Derby was Iraq.
Yep.
So I'm going to give those two a shot. They're both going to be ignored. I can tell you the horse that if he wins, I will walk back to Austin is Looking at Lee.
Hey,
walk back.
I'm sure. Hey, JK, I'm sure that we got a couple more minutes to touch on this race.
Oh yeah.
I want to touch on a couple things quick about this race, though.
Please.
Okay. The one thing that I love in preps like this are big races over the track. I think that's a major edge, especially up here.
Agreed. Haskell winners don't have a good record in this race. Jim Dandy rans do.
To me, that's kind of a lot of my thought process with Good Samaritan is he jumped up and ran a big race over the track. I'm not saying that he was or wasn't biased that day, the way it played out, but I love the fact that he got an affinity for the track, that he's only started once on the dirt. It was at Saratoga. It was an incredibly good race in that horse's form, and I think that if he jumps up with another huge one, that he likes the surface. It's a whole different ball game up here running 1.25 miles than it is down in Jersey running 1.125 miles. It's a completely different ball game for me. I don't want Gervin. I don't want McCracken. I'm against those horses coming out of the Haskell. I've seen and heard a lot about IRAP. I've watched his races. I watched his bluegrass race. I thought I don't really have an excuse for a practical joke in there other than maybe he didn't want to go that far. I didn't think the rest of the horses ran their races. The Ohio Derby, look, if you were able to come back with Gervin at Monmouth, then I'm sure that you made a fortune. Me, I'm against those horses coming in here trying to get 1.25 miles over the track. The reason that I would use Tappert second would simply be because of the distance. I think that he's the one in here that really is going to be fine at that distance.
Yeah, Pipes and I are exactly the same, like in this race 4-5-5-4. Podcast host emeritus Mike Hogan said something on Twitter that surprised me. He was like, somebody please explain to me the case for Tappert. Well, I mean, Pipes hit both of the notes now with a little help from JK too. The idea of a late developing 3-year-old. This horse doesn't have the same portfolio, I feel like, of an over-the-top late season Todd Pletcher 3-year-old that we've seen. I feel like the horse is, tanned, rested, and ready. And then I also think when you're dealing with 1.25 miles, the distance, you can't. I feel like distance can be such an underrated factor in this sort of computer data oriented day and age of handicapping. I think sometimes you got to think back to old school and look at breeding and look at horsemanship, and both of those lead me right to Tappert's nose.
And I love the fact that he sat the pocket last time. That's not a Todd trip usually. Todd's horses are in the clear, 2 wide, that Johnny V look around deal,
2 press grind,
and then he sat the pocket in behind, 8 dirt, opened up, and he finished. Like that's a really nice indicator of the talent this horse has.
Another point about Good Samaritan, this came up on the the handicapping session I did last night with Mike Watchmaker and Travis Stone. If folks want to catch the replay, you can go to drf.com/YouTube to check out that handicapping session and lots of other great content from our friends at DRF like Mike Beer and Dan Illman and, of course, Matt Bernier. And a point that Travis made about Good Samaritan, something he'd sort of heard around the racetrack, and Pipes, I want to hear if you've ever thought about this or heard people talk about this, that sometimes a horse, a horse who's been on turf its whole life, the first time on dirt, they can act on it and do well. But then subsequently, they sort of learn that they don't like it in some instances, because it is harder, generally speaking, on horses than turf. And that sometimes that first start on dirt will be the best start. I don't necessarily subscribe to this view, but I thought it was interesting. Any comment from you, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard people say that. Obviously, getting on the racetrack, you hear a lot of people say a lot of things. I think, you know what, man, each horse is individual to itself, and a lot of things in this game are circumstantial. I hear all the time with handicapping about, this guy's 3 for 22 in this spot. This guy is, 4 for his last 9 when he puts. Well, you know what? Everything in horse racing, as you guys know, is circumstantial. They could say a guy's batting 4% first time out, but that doesn't necessarily take into account the horses that he's put on the track that have run second and third and been right there with troubled trips, or everything is circumstantial. So I'm not going to put a lot of stock into saying a horse is going to regress because, you know what, the first time he stepped on dirt that, he's supposed to excel or like it the first time. Now the second time he's going to, no, I don't put stock into that. I'm not a believer. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I believe it's circumstantial. On any given day, you have to get the right type of circumstances, the right type of trips. And I think that's more so, what happened last time was more so him liking the distance against horses that were tailing off. And I think that he's going to get the trip. He's going to get the distance. He likes the track. To me, if I can get a square enough price, which I think I will, he'll be on my tickets, especially in Grand Slams and stuff like that, to hit the board. I think he'll run well.
Let's talk quickly about the Boston Spa, and then I want to wrap up, Pipes. I'm going to ask you to tell a quick story. Don't worry, it's not one that has any obscenities in it. I wouldn't put you in that position. But I do want to hear your thoughts on the Boston Spa real quick. Is this a single Lady Eli situation? Are you, like me, interested in Antono? How do you see the race?
Me or JK?
You go first, Chris.
I'm coming back with Lady Eli in here. I thought last time. I'm going to say the theme of Saturday to be seems like just completely paceless races, especially in these graded stakes races. I don't see where pace is coming from in any of these races. This race, obviously, Dickinson looks like she's going to be loose. I think that Lady Eli is going to sit the hedge in behind like she does covered, and I don't have a ton to say to try to beat her. I just think she's best in here.
JK?
Yeah, I'm when I first started going to the racetrack, I learned two things. One that I don't think is very true. The other one I learned was that gray horses scare the other horses. That was the first thing I learned. So they run. That's why they always run well. And the second thing I learned was, and I don't believe the first one. I don't know anything that I won.
I'm glad you clarified.
Betting gray horses. The second one is that when horses break through the gate, they don't run well.
That's an it depends.
Well, yeah, and these two horses broke through the gate and both ran huge. I want Antono again. I think the mile and the 16th is perfect for her. I think the shorter the better. I believe the last race is a mile and an 8th. I want Antono in here, but I'm going to use both Lady Eli and Antono. And I'm not going to worry about the other ones. I guess the other Chad, Roca Rojo, could beat me. But if Chad loses this race, I might not walk all the way back to Austin, but I'll maybe take a Greyhound or something.
I mean, has in your guys' opinions, has Dickinson just really tailed off later this summer? Or are you thinking that there's factors involved there? Because to me, in her just a game, she vacated the hedge very early to go up after Sassy Little Lila, and Antono snuck right up the fence on her, and that was the lane to run through. I didn't think she ran a bad race in there last time. I thought that Quidura did the right thing by trying to be aggressive and almost stole the race that way, and Dickinson had to sit off, which wasn't, which was kind of that first over chase trip, which wasn't in her liking. I'm wondering if she gets loose on the lead, do you guys think that she has the potential to be an upsetter as the lone speeder, or are you guys just drawing a line through her?
No, I think that Lady Eli showed it in California that she can be closer if she needs to be. So it doesn't feel like she's going to let Dickinson get away from her. I think the thing about Dickinson is Kieran, when his are good, they're good, and when they're bad, they're bad. They don't usually reverse that form within a cycle. They have to take a break and then they come back, and then they're just like damn good again. And so I think that's kind of what's happening with Dickinson.
I was going with the tailed off idea that you do make potentially valid excuses, and without Quidera to push, who knows? I wouldn't discourage anybody from saving, but I think if I'm going to be going out there with Antono and Lady Eli, I probably equity-wise in the picks can't afford to put Dickinson in there without chiseling too much of the value away. I think if you got too scared of Dickinson, it would become sort of a pass situation. Does that sound about right?
I'm switching it up on Looms Boldly over here, and I'm taking the host role here. I'm going to start asking you guys the questions.
I love it. No, it's always a free-flowing conversation here on the pod. You're more than welcome to throw that stuff out. So the quick story I wanted you to tell was, we've had a new regular at the Paddock Bar this year. My daughter, Perrin, she calls our little area upstairs the clubhouse, loves hanging out with the guys. And like a true horse player, not always the best loser. Chris, I wanted you to tell the story of my conversation with her that I've heard you tell a couple people.
Well, I thought you were going to say there's a new member to the Paddock Bar, and you were going to talk about the guy that you invited up last week, the buddy of yours that screams for every horse in every race. I was going to say to you, geez, I hope that he doesn't come back. I thought that was going to be the story.
Very mean. He's listening right now, and you're bad mouthing the poor guy. No, the other story. On your daughter's note, she's much like me. She's very sour after when she doesn't get things her own way, and she was a little upset the other day. JK, she didn't win the race, and her dad did. Her dad was jubilant right in her face, and I would have done the same thing that she did. I would have told him to knock it off. And Pete told her. He looked at her. He said, "You know what? You got to be happy for the people that are winning up here, including your father." And she did what I would have did. She just walked away. I love her. If you put her up for adoption, Pete, I'll take her. I'll throw my hat in the ring. Keep that in mind. There'll probably be some European vacation at some point. We'll send her off to God knows where in this crazy horse track world to stay with Uncle Pipes.
But no, she's cool, man. She's cool. That was fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys today.
Awesome. She's heading back. We're about to head over there. Muggs, the handicapping Labrador, is done barking. I want to thank JK, as always, and Chris Pipito. Fantastic appearance today. But, no good deed goes unpunished. You did so well. We're going to have you back soon, if that's cool.
No, I appreciate it. And good luck to you guys this weekend, man. I'll be over there with you guys, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll see you in a few minutes. Most of all, I want to thank everybody for tuning in, asking questions. The iTunes download direct to the phone situation is fixed. Apparently, we still have to get it repopulating to the main screen over there, one thing at a time. But thanks to producer Craig for taking care of that one element of it anyway. My name's Peter Thomas Fornatal. May you win all your Travers Day photos.